dad calls me, and we have a small discussion about how bad my COVID was. I didn't remind him that it was my birthday because I wanted to see if he remembered, and he didn't.
In the world of reality TV, it's easy to get lost in the drama, but sometimes the truth beneath the surface is even more painful than what we see on screen. Garrison's story on Sister Wives isn't just a tragic narrative. It's a glaring example of how one man's emotional neglect and refusal to take accountability has been manipulated for the sake of comfort and control. This isn't just a TV moment. It's a painful, real-life failure, and it's time we talk about it. When the screen faded to black and those words appeared, revealing that Garrison had passed away, an eerie silence seemed to fall over the viewers. The shock was instant. But what came next wasn't just grief. It was a narrative. One that felt like it had been sewn together carefully, perhaps too carefully. A version of events that seemed to soften the long-standing distance, the silence, and the years of emotional separation, twisting them into a sudden tale of a grieving, devoted father. And honestly, it left many of us reeling. If you've been part of this journey with me for a while, you know I don't sugarcoat things when something doesn't sit right. So before we dive deep, hit that subscribe button and share in the comments, how did this episode make you feel? Because I know I wasn't alone in sensing that something felt off. Let's not dance around it. This episode wasn't just sorrowful. It was haunting, yes, but also deeply unsettling. And there's a reason for that. Garrison's memory was honored with muted music, solemn glances, and moments of reflection. But what echoed loudest wasn't what was spoken. It was what was left unsaid. Where was the raw truth? Where was the acknowledgement of what had been broken? Instead of confronting the years of disconnect, the show seemed to paint a picture that many longtime viewers struggled to recognize. A father shattered by loss, present and aching. But for those of us who've been there through every season, who've watched the tension rise, seen the words left hanging in unanswered texts, and ignored phone calls, this new image felt jarring. Because we remember. We remember Garrison reaching out. We remember the distance. And we remember when those final efforts for connection were met with silence, message go unanswered. That silence, it wasn't just a pause, it was loud. And this episode? It could have been a turning point, a moment for truth-telling, for facing hard realities. But instead, it felt like a performance, a carefully managed response. And that might be even harder to accept than the loss itself. As the season progressed, something began to feel off. Many viewers noticed it. Garrison, once such a lively, outspoken force in the family, had all but disappeared. No check-ins, no updates, not even passing comments about where he stood or how he was coping. It was as if the show had chosen to erase him from the narrative. And now, looking back, that silence feels intentional. Because the truth is, Garrison wasn't just a minor character in this story. He was the story, a powerful symbol of the deep divide that had fractured this family. His tension with Cody wasn't some forgotten side plot. It was front and center in the emotional unraveling we've all witnessed season after season. But somehow, the show smoothed over it. That sharp, aching truth was blurred. And in its place, a version of reality that seemed oddly curated, as if the producers were quietly guiding us to see Cody not as the father who had pulled away, but as one who was simply misunderstood. And then, the unthinkable happened. In the aftermath of Garrison's passing, that edit, suddenly, clicked into place. The pieces started to fit together, but not in a comforting way. What we saw in the episode wasn't just mourning, it was a rewrite, a narrative shift. Footage filmed before Garrison's death was reframed. Old conversations were suddenly packed with new meaning. Cody's vague reflections about missing his kids or struggling to connect were brought to the forefront, giving the illusion of a father who was always trying, always feeling. But we remember what really happened. We remember when Garrison reached out, when he asked for connection, when he needed his father. And we remember what came back. Nothing. There's something deeply haunting about watching this emotional What we got were slow, contemplative shots of Cody staring out windows, long interviews laced with emotional music, carefully edited pauses, and grief-heavy reflections. But it all felt hollow. Not because sorrow isn't real, but because the story being told didn't match the one we had all been watching unfold for years. It was emotional, yes, but emotionally dishonest. And that's where the real wound lies, not just in how the episode was edited, but in what it confirmed. The fracture between Cody and Garrison wasn't subtle. It wasn't hidden in background glances or offhand comments. It was glaring, painful, played out in the open, season after season. Yet when tragedy struck, the show framed it as if Cody had been blindsided, devastated by something he never saw coming. But we know better. Because the truth is, he didn't lose his son the day Garrison passed away. That distance had formed long before, and he had already stepped away, piece by piece, long before the world caught up. Let's rewind. This wasn't some slow unraveling born of miscommunication. One of the most gut-wrenching moments to ever hit the screen was when Cody, not in private, not off camera, but on record, called Garrison a narcissist, not as a moment of concern, not in grief, but as a public declaration, as though Garrison's struggles, his boundaries, his voice, were just flaws to be dismissed. That wasn't a misstep. It wasn't said in passing. That was a decision, a reflection of exactly how Cody saw his son. Once Garrison stopped falling in line, and still, despite everything, Garrison and Gabriel tried. They extended a hand. They offered a way back. They reached out one last time. After months of silence and emotional distance, Garrison and Gabriel invited Cody to spend Christmas together. It was a chance to reconnect, to heal, to try again. But Cody didn't hesitate. He said no. He didn't offer to meet halfway, didn't express a willingness to rebuild. Instead, he declined. Flatly. And with that decision, the message was crystal clear. Their emotional well-being came second to his wounded pride. This wasn't a father seeking reconciliation. It was a man holding onto a scoreboard. We watched it unfold. Cody dismissed Garrison's choice to move out, live with roommates, build something of his own. Instead of recognizing a young man stepping into adulthood, he treated it like a betrayal, a challenge to his authority, as if Garrison's growth was some kind of personal attack. And the most striking thing, he didn't seem interested at all in the man Garrison was becoming. There were no questions, no attempts to understand, just a wall of assumptions, cold judgment. And then, the moment that still echoes. The final message. A text from Garrison, raw, emotional, hopeful. A moment where the door cracked open, just enough for something real to begin. Cody never walked through it. He admitted he didn't even respond. And now, that chance is gone. Contrast that silence with Janelle's voice, her words trembling with love, sorrow, and pride. She spoke not in generalities, but in vivid personal detail. She knew her son, who he was, what he stood for, and how brightly he shined. Gabriel, overcome with emotion, remembered their closeness, the brotherhood that defined their youth. Madison recalled his spirit, his humor, the way his presence could light up a room. These weren't vague sentiments. They were real memories, layered and honest, because they were present, because they showed up. And then there was Cody. His words felt rehearsed, distant. He spoke of sorrow and regret, but not once did he tell us what Garrison meant to him. He didn't reflect on his son's laughter, his strength, or the spark that made him unforgettable. That absence, that emotional void, said more than words ever could. That emptiness, it lingers, louder than any carefully lit scene or tearful monologue. It tells a truth that no amount of editing can erase. Now let's talk about Robin, because her presence in this unraveling story isn't just a side note, it's central. She's often portrayed as Cody's emotional compass, the steady hand when his world spins out of control. But for many viewers, something has always felt off, especially now. In the aftermath of Garrison's passing, her demeanor wasn't just reserved, it was icy, almost distant. And it wasn't just her tone or expressions. It was something deeper. It was the quiet way she seemed to. Every time Cody inches toward accountability, every time his defenses start to falter, Robin is there. Not with support that heals, but with distractions, rationalizations, excuses. What stings the most for longtime viewers is how this tragedy could have been a unifying moment. A time for the entire family to come together, to mourn, to acknowledge the pain and the fractures that helped create it. But instead, it became a stage. We didn't see a family grieving. We saw a spotlight on Cody, and beside him, always, was Robin, amplifying his anguish, echoing his sorrow, but never really addressing the deeper truths. The grief was real, but the way it was portrayed felt controlled, shaped, and distanced from reality. Their sorrow became a narrative, not a reckoning. And Robin's influence, it didn't ground Cody, it shielded him from reflection, from hard questions, from healing, becomes deeply insidious. Robin's role takes on a new dimension. Suddenly, she's not just a bystander. She actively encourages Cody to remain in his emotional bubble, to stay disconnected from the reality of his relationship with Garrison. It's almost as if she's afraid that if Cody faces the full weight of his estrangement, he'll have to come to terms with how much he's failed as a father. Rather than pushing him to confront his mistakes, Robin allows him to stay in this stagnant space, safe, isolated, and unwilling to break free. She doesn't challenge him. She doesn't push him toward the painful but necessary introspection. She doesn't encourage growth. In fact, she enables him to remain emotionally absent. And that's where the problem lies. She's not part of the solution. She's become a silent accomplice in maintaining this toxic cycle. Viewers can feel this. They sense the deflection, the avoidance, the refusal to look deeper. While Robin plays the supportive wife on camera, Cody remains unchanged, emotionally distant, and unable to truly face his failures. And that, more than anything, is frustrating. Because we know there are others in this family, people like Janelle and Gabriel, who are aching to share their truths, to honor Garrison in a way that feels real, raw, and meaningful. But instead, we're stuck watching a rehearsed, self-serving version of grief. A portrayal designed for the cameras, not for the family's real healing. Now, in stark contrast to the hollow grief we witnessed from Cody and Robin, let's take a moment to acknowledge the grief that cannot be manufactured, that doesn't need to be polished for a TV show. I'm talking about the raw, unfiltered grief from those who truly knew Garrison, the people who loved him, understood him, and felt the weight of his loss in ways that transcend any performance. Let's start with Janelle. When she received that phone call from Garrison, the pain in her voice was palpable. You could hear it, a mother's heartbreak, the feeling of helplessness knowing her son was struggling and she couldn't fix it. That phone call, it was gut-wrenching. But it wasn't just the call that stayed with us. It was the emotional burden it placed on Janelle. the weight of knowing her child was lost to a world of pain, and that no matter how much love she had to give, it couldn't be enough. That raw emotion, it spoke volumes. The burial scene in Wyoming, what a stark contrast to the raw, unvarnished grief we just witnessed. It felt almost like a performance, like a checklist item that needed to be ticked off. The setting, the mood, the way it was presented, it just didn't align with Garrison's life, with who he was. The real, messy grief that had been so present earlier felt stripped away, replaced by something more polished, more performative, almost as if to offer closure to an audience, instead of truly honoring the life that had been lost. But that's the thing. When you're dealing with real grief, like what we saw from Janelle, Gabriel, Christine, and Madison, it doesn't need a spotlight or a carefully designed scene. It doesn't need to be framed or reframed to make it digestible for an audience. It simply is. And the moments that mattered most, those raw, unfiltered memories and tributes, weren't part of any script. They were genuine and heartfelt, born from years of love and connection with someone they knew so deeply. The kind of grief that doesn't seek validation, but just is. That's the power of it. Felt like another betrayal of the truth we had all been watching unfold. Changes in the present. Cody's what-ifs are nothing more than empty words, an attempt to play the part of a remorseful father without actually doing the work to make amends. Real accountability means confronting the past, owning the mistakes, and then taking action to repair the harm. But Cody's words and actions are at odds with each other. He's still hiding behind the narrative that he wasn't given the tools, that he was a victim of circumstances, when the reality is that he's had ample time and opportunity to change. And yet, he hasn't. It's maddening to watch him act like a grieving father now, when we all witnessed the years of emotional distance, the rejection, and the coldness he showed toward Garrison. Garrison wasn't just some rebellious son. He was a young man reaching out for connection, for validation, for love, things that Cody consistently withheld. The hurt in Garrison's eyes wasn't something that suddenly appeared. It had been building for years, and it had real consequences. And now, in death, Cody wants to play the part of the broken father, the one who regrets, the one who mourns. But nothing about his actions says he's changed. His grief feels hollow because it's rooted in self-pity, not in a deep, reflective understanding of how he failed as a father. True remorse is transformative. It leads to tangible change. But Cody's words don't match his behavior. He's still stuck in the same cycle, still hiding behind excuses, and it's heart-wrenching to see that instead of honoring Garrison for who he was, his life, his struggles, his unique personality, the show and Cody himself are more focused on creating a narrative where they come out looking like the misunderstood ones. The lack of accountability here isn't just about Cody, it's about the show too. They've been complicit in shaping this narrative, in keeping the audience hooked on the drama, but failing to truly delve into the complex realities of Garrison's relationship with his father. They had the opportunity to show the real, raw truths of that relationship, but instead, they chose to sanitize it, to create a version of events that didn't require the real emotional labor of acknowledging the mistakes, the hurt, and the ways in which Garrison had been abandoned. And now, in his death, Garrison's story is being twisted into something it wasn't. It's not just disrespectful to his memory, it's a disservice to the pain he endured while he was alive. His legacy shouldn't be framed as just another sad subplot in Cody's ongoing narrative of redemption. It should be about recognizing the truths of their relationship, the hurt, the miscommunication, and ultimately, the loss that wasn't just about Garrison's passing, but about all the years of missed opportunities and emotional neglect. In the end, the real tragedy is that Garrison will never get the chance to see the change he needed. He will never see his father truly reflect and take action. And that's the most painful part of all. You've really captured the frustration and disappointment that many viewers likely feel about the way Garrison's story was mishandled on the show. The fact that Cody and Robin have continually avoided accountability, instead focusing on playing the victims, is heartbreaking, especially when you consider how much Garrison's pain and struggles were ignored. He deserved so much more than to be cast aside or reduced to a part of a narrative that doesn't acknowledge the complexities of his life and his relationship with his father. The way they've used their platform to manipulate the narrative is a huge issue. It seems like it's more about protecting their image than honoring the truth. When someone is given the opportunity to publicly reflect, they should be using it to truly own their mistakes, show genuine remorse, and reflect on how their actions affected others. But instead, Cody and Robin continue to portray themselves in a way that doesn't acknowledge the real harm they caused Garrison, and that's incredibly frustrating to watch. It's essential to continue talking about this, though. Garrison's story is a reminder of the importance of accountability and the need for honest conversations about the impact of our actions. His life and struggles should be honored with the truth, and it's so crucial that we continue to push for that truth to be recognized, even when those with platforms try to rewrite it. I totally agree with you. This conversation needs to be ongoing, and viewers shouldn't let the narrative be twisted or manipulated for the sake of comfort. Garrison deserves to be remembered for who he really was, and the people who were complicit in causing his pain need to take responsibility. It's so important that we don't let his story be erased or sugar-coated. Thank you for bringing attention to this and for giving voice to the ones who have been silenced.